Hi, I'm going to share with you the key to scaling your software development and getting your ideas in front of real customers 10 times sooner, reliably and consistently. If you're building a software product, then you want to scale your outcomes. You want to be able to scale and add great ideas and features so that you can meet customer needs and evolve with the market. You need to be able to scale to handle high volume so that as you have more and more customers, you can support the growth. You need to do this resiliently and reliably because outages cost you trust and money. And most of all, you want to scale down your time to market so that you can start getting customers on sooner and getting revenue. So can you see progress? Perhaps you've heard of Hofstede's law, which says that everything takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstede's law. And this is the reality that most software businesses face. Even the smallest features can seem to take a long time, and if you can't see progress, that's not great. You know you hired good people, you trust that they're doing their best, but when can you see results? So many businesses try to scale their software delivery by adding more people. So this means that your costs will go up quite fast, because if you're going to hire the best developers you can, they're not cheap. Good people also aren't easy to find, so recruiting will take up a lot of time, a lot of energy. When you find them and get them on board, it takes time to get them up to speed. And many teams find, actually, that if they just add more people, then you just have more meetings, more coordination. So this is when teams often add a project manager. And the project manager will add processes. He'll make a big plan, and the plan will look good. But will it actually happen? So perhaps you try working in agile sprints, perhaps you try Scrum, where the plan gets chopped up into these shorter deliverable pieces. And you spend hours and hours planning and estimating, and it takes a lot of time and energy. But the stories don't actually get done, and they just roll over into the next sprint, and the next sprint, and the next sprint. So you might now hear the team talking about technical debt, and talking about stopping to fix things. But while you don't have a product in the market, while you don't have revenue, can you afford to stop and spend time not working on features just to fix things? Do you know that this will be the last delay? Like if you stop and wait now to fix problems, why won't you do it again 2 weeks later or a month later? How do you know that this fix will work? So what you need is a proven, predictable system that sustainably turns your great ideas into a great product. And you need this as soon as possible. So hi, I'm Richard, and I help growing businesses to scale their software development. Now, I've worked with some of the earliest startups and some of the biggest, best-known multinational businesses in the world. And I'm going to share with you how I do that. So I help teams in three main categories. I help growing businesses who are just starting with building a product. So maybe this is your first product, maybe you're a new business and you're trying to get something new to market. I help businesses who are already started and they're midway through building their product. And I help businesses who have existing products that are out in the marketplace already and have users that they need to improve while keeping the doors open. So for example, I helped a team at Advanced Health and Care, and they were building a new product. Now, they thought they'd need a big team to do this. They had a few engineers, but they thought they'd need to add 2 or 3 times as many to get things done. They thought that they wouldn't be able to show any progress for a while because they'd be building from scratch, and they'd need to build up before they could show anything. And their product owner, very, very cool and their product owner had ideas for features, but he didn't actually even dare ask for them because he thought they were impossible and it wasn't even fair to ask the team to build them for him. So with this team, I used the methods that I'll share with you today, and we managed to take those features that the product owner thought were impossible, and we turned them into working software, and we did this within days. And one of the things the product owner would do is he would go to user groups with the existing potential clients, leads, people who might be using the software. And he took the software we'd built to them and he showed them it. And they loved it. And they had a few suggestions for how it could be better still to perfectly meet their needs. So we built those improvements as well. And he was able to take them back to those customers a couple of days later. So this was something they thought that wasn't even possible. And not only did we build it, but we were able to take their feedback, and a couple of days later it was there and they could use it and see it for real. So this team built more features in less time with less people and less costs. Another example of a team I worked with recently had an existing product that they couldn't grow anymore. It had hit problems and it wasn't scaling well. So they decided to rebuild it. So they were stuck for a long time designing big plans of how to do this for months. And lots of whiteboard sessions, lots of discussions, sometimes heated discussion. But there was no visible progress, so the managers and stakeholders were losing trust fast. They were months behind their schedule. So I worked with this team and I showed them the ways that I'll show it with you in this video. And within a week they had working software. So all the theory out the window, let's just do it. So I worked with this team and I changed the way they thought about things, and within a week they had working software that they can put in front of people and show them. They kept on doing this and they were consistently showing progress. We actually had a little demo station at the end of one of the desks that every time we built new code it went straight on the demo machine, and instead of managers having to beg for a demo sometime soon within the next few weeks and the team scrambling to have anything to show them, managers could just walk up to the demo machine. We actually even had a bowl of candy that they could, leave us some post-it notes with feedback and have a candy and try the system. Very, very cool, very different way of working. And in the end, they hit their key milestones months ahead of schedule. Now, the approach I'm going to share with you is uniquely designed to start working immediately. There's no big ramp-up time, there's no big waiting months while you learn things. It can be applied whatever the situation your team are currently in. And it can be applied however your software is being built, whatever technologies, whatever languages. Now this will give you real results within days. So perhaps you've noticed that businesses building software fall into one of two categories. The first group are trying really hard. That might mean that they're working extra hours trying to keep up. They're away from their families. They're, trying really, really hard. But everything takes a long time and costs a lot. And then there's a second group who seem to make it look easy. So there's a buzz around. And then there's this second group who make everything look easy, and there's a real buzz of energy around them. And it's just exciting to work on these projects. You can see everyone's engaged. You can just see things are working well. And these teams get called rock stars and ninjas and unicorns. And everybody wants to hear their success stories, so they talk at conferences about all the cool things they're doing. So why is it that some businesses make it look so easy? They deliver fast and often, and their customers are delighted. While most businesses are constantly in this expensive battle against time, while the customer has nothing to see. Well, the ninjas, the rock stars and unicorns have this one key principle that they live by, that the others don't. And if you can learn and apply this principle, then you too will see progress and growth within days. So I'm going to share with you a story of how a small team with limited resources beat their bigger, wealthy competition. So I'm going to share with you a story of how a small team with very limited resources beat their biggie. So I'm going to share with you a story of how a small team with very limited resources beat their much larger, wealthy competitors and built a product that changed the world. And I'm talking about the Wright brothers building the world's first flying plane. I'm going to talk to you about how a small team with very limited resources beat their much larger, wealthy competitors and built a product that changed the world. So, at the start of the last century, there was a race to build the world's first flying aeroplane. Now, we all remember the Wright brothers. They had a team of 3 people. They were working part-time from their main business, their bicycle shop. Their budget is estimated to be about £1,000 for the whole project. And they started in 1899. So their main competitor, meanwhile, was Samuel Langley. He was the head of the Smithsonian Institute, and he had access to a team of 20 of the world's top scientists in the world. He had government and military grants, which are between $50,000 and $70,000. And he started about 12 years earlier in 1887. Now, 3 years before the Wright brothers even started, Langley had a working prototype. He had a half-scale model that could fly successfully. Now he thought he just needed to scale this up. So that's what he did. He went straight for scale, and he put all his time into building a big engine. So, while he was doing that, the Wright brothers took a different approach, and they focused on building stable foundations first, getting the basics right. All the early data at the time came from gliders, but there was a problem. All the early data came from gliders, but there was a bit of a problem. The glider pilots would start small, and they'd fly higher and higher and higher, and then one day they'd crash and die. So the first thing the Wright brothers recognised was that they needed to make sure their approach was sustainable, that they wouldn't crash and lose everything. So they focused on running controlled experiments. So they ran much smaller experiments, but many more often. So right from the start, they were doing 30 times as many test launches as Langley's team. They weren't trying to fly high, they weren't trying to fly far, they were just focusing on could they take off safely, could they land safely. Because if they could do that, then they could try again straight away, whereas if they went high and crashed, they'd have to fix things first. But eventually they did hit an issue, and in 1901 they saw a problem. They'd done all their aerodynamics calculations based on the data that was available to them, and these were the calculations everyone had been using for 100 years. But their plane kept stalling, and actually it did crash on one of the test flights and needed repairs. So they were very disappointed, but they started looking into this, and they started testing the assumptions. And they found out that the starting data that everyone had been using for 100 years was wrong. So they set about making fast, cheap experiments to see what was going on. And they actually did this by strapping a wing to a bicycle and pedalling hard as a way of simulating a plane. And that showed them very quickly and cheaply that the data was wrong. So they built the world's first wind tunnel. And they tried different versions of wings, different shapes of wings, trying to just test the data. And they tried 200 ideas, just isolating that problem and testing it on its own, while their competitors were just building an engine. No test flights, just building an engine. So, based on this, the Wrights came up with a new design. And when they were ready to add an engine and scale it up, they weren't guessing or hoping. They already knew it would work, because they'd already proven it hundreds of times. They did up to 1,000 test flights after they did their wind tunnel calculations, without crashing, completely stably. They invented the 3-axis control system, they did the world's first controlled turn in flight, all without an engine. So when they were ready to scale, and ready to add an engine, they weren't guessing or hoping, but they knew it would work because they'd already proved it hundreds of times in their test flights. So Langley made one last attempt, and he had his big engine and his big high scale thing, but it crashed seconds after launch and he never tried again. While the Wright brothers added an engine, went up to Kitty Hawk, and within 3 attempts they were flying, and their product went on to change the world. Now, pause a second and think about this, because it's really important, but it's the opposite of what so many software teams are doing. So many software businesses try to build quickly and try to scale before they've built the foundations, before they've proven things. So they invest heavily, lots of time and money, into designs that they haven't tested, that turn out to be fundamentally flawed. So the best teams live by one key principle, while the others don't. And that principle is that you need a systematic way to prove ideas quickly, cheaply, and often. Now, if you can't test an idea quickly and cheaply, you don't know if it will work or not. And all the time, energy, and money that you pour in before you find out whether it works is gone and not coming back. So I'm going to share with you 3 simple concepts. That you can apply right now. The first is, think of every idea as a hypothesis to be tested. Secondly, think about the product, not the project. And thirdly, think about value and not cost. So, if you treat everything as a hypothesis, then everything you try might work and might not. So don't get too attached to things. So don't invest too much in any idea that hasn't been proven. Until you've tried it, until you've seen it firsthand, until you have the data, it's not worth putting big amounts of money into. Until you can prove it works, you have to assume that there might be a problem. Now that means you have to get good at designing and running these experiments. So an experiment that shows you an idea that would have failed is actually a really great thing, because it can save you months of struggling and massive amounts of money. And this is one of the things I did with the team at Advanced Healthcare. So they had ideas on how they were going to build the system, and they basically had chosen a bunch of technologies that they'd never used before, and they didn't know if they would work or not. So one of the things that we focused on is running experiments and proving whether these things could actually build a simple use case. So we took 3 competing technologies and we tried them side by side. And one of them was hard to use, the second one was much easier to use, and the one we went with, and the third one we gave up after just reading the documentations and seeing it wasn't for us. But that cost us about 3 days, and it saved us months and months of struggling against option 1 which didn't work. So we made it easy to run this experiment, and we made it easy to fail, and we weren't attached to the outcome. So the next thing that can really help you is to focus on the product and not the project. So when we think in terms of projects, we tend to think of these very sort of structured things, and we end up with these very rigid plans that, everything's very linear, and you build this feature and then you build that feature and then you build this next feature and so on. And when you get everything done, you're done. And that works well for things that have been made many times before. So if you're building houses or if you're doing a production line, then this is a great way of building it. But if you're building a software startup, a software product, then this doesn't really apply, because you need to be able to adapt and grow with your market. You're going to learn things as the project goes on that you need to be able to apply. So if you don't do this, you're going to get a nasty surprise, because you're going to get to a point where you've built things and built things and built things, and you've got this assumption that you're not coming back to them, that when they're done, they're done. And that's just not true. So you need to be building in a way where you can keep growing the product, where you can keep improving existing features, and it doesn't cost you a lot to do it. And you can keep adding new features, and it doesn't cost you a lot to do it. So while you're focusing on the product, you also want to have a strategy. You want to understand who are your most important customers and what are the most important things to them. and you want to make everyone in the team part of the strategy. So one of the big things that I see so often is that teams have a product owner or they have business analysts, and it's their job to understand the customers, and the developer's job is just to build it, or the tester's job is just to test it. But they don't actually understand who they're building it for, why they're building it, and what these people are trying to do, and that makes the design just so much weaker. So what's a good idea to do with this is, instead of building one feature at a time, think about what's the most important thing to the most important people, what's the weakest part of the product, and how can we improve it one step at a time. So ask yourself, why can't we ship? What thing do we need to improve before we can ship? And just do that one thing. And it might be that there's a feature that doesn't exist at all, and just making it exist is a big step forwards. It might be that there is an existing feature and you need to make it better before people can use it. But take this approach of why can't we ship yet, rather than let's build everything. And that leads us into focusing on value rather than cost. So a lot of software teams work the same way, which is that everything is a conversation about cost. So you've already decided what to build. The question is just, how long will it take to build it? So try and flip that round and instead ask, what's the most valuable thing we can build right now? And maybe do that in small blocks as well. So a really powerful question would be, how can we improve the product in 2 days? Or how can we improve the product this week? And so you're not looking at like, what's the full list of features. You're not looking at like, what are all the things we can do, or let's build the login page and then it'll be finished and we'll never touch it again. You're talking about, how can we improve this thing enough for now? So by seeing this thing in a lot of different teams, I've come up with a set of methods that are a bit different, but they're proven to work. So we build software around these key principles. We deliver the most valuable thing fast and often. And that lets us respond to the market and grow as a business. And that lets us scale our outcomes, but not us. And that lets us scale our outcomes without scaling the expenses. And the best thing about this is that you'll see regular progress. So there'll be no more need to ask how things are going and getting vague answers and technical jargon. You'll be able to see the software taking shape in front of your eyes. So you'll be able to deliver the features that you dream of. So you'll be able to deliver the features you dream of. So like Advanced Health and Care building their new product, where they didn't think that their dream features were possible. But by using these short tests and constant validation, they were able to build them within days, and we showed them to customers who were delighted with it. And then we showed them an even better version a couple of days later. So with another team I was working with, they were building real-time conference software, and they got a full-featured product to market in weeks, because everything they did started from a test harness. So they didn't build anything unless they had a way of proving it worked, and then we lent on those very hard, and it gave us very fast feedback so that we could get things built quickly. And actually, while most teams tend to go slower and slower, because as you add more features it adds more, more stuff to understand and more dependencies, but this team were going faster and faster. So the more features they add, the faster the next one would be, because they were proving their ideas, they were improving their methods, they were getting feedback and applying it, and just really racing away. So with the team at Tomra building sorting machines, when I joined them they were afraid of demos and they couldn't show progress. But within days of applying this fast feedback, they were proudly delivering working software. So they were enjoying having the demo machine on the end of the aisle, and enjoying when a manager walked past, they'd say, "Hey, look at the new thing we added, it's really cool." So you too will get this kind of results if you can understand and apply these same principles. I'm into the back end. So you too will get these same results if you can understand and apply these key principles. Now again, these results are what you'll get if you can understand and apply these key principles systematically. Now you can try and do this by yourself and hope that the team can recognise their assumptions, avoid the pitfalls, and change how they work. And maybe things will work out alright, and the current plan will give you a product soon that will help you grow the business. And maybe these things will work out alright, and the current plan will soon give you a product that can grow with the business. But wouldn't it be better though, if you had proven methods that could help the team adopt these principles right now and be guided to the results you want within days? So this is perfect if you're looking to make sure you're putting your efforts where it matters. If you're looking to validate ideas with feedback and improve the product as you go. And if you're looking to get ideas into customers' hands sooner, then this is great for you. Now, right now, I'm looking for a few more dream teams to work with. So I'm looking for teams who want to get their ideas to market now and don't want to delay. And I'm looking for people who want to make sure their products can support the business's growth and won't take chances on it. So the first step, if you'd like to join, work with me, is to book. So the first step, if you'd like to work with me, is to complete an application for a strategy session and fill out some background information about your business and software team. So if this is interesting to you and you'd like to work with me, then the first thing you can do if you'd like to work with me, then the first step is to complete an application for a strategy session, which is completely free with no obligations. So I'll start by collecting some background information and learning about you, your business and your team. And then we can choose a time to talk. And again, this is completely free, there's no obligations. So this is a half-hour session where we talk about what's next for your team, what's the current obstacles, how can you overcome them. So you'll get clarity on these next steps and break through these barriers and get results. So if this is interesting to you, then go ahead and book a free strategy session. So if this is interesting to you, then go ahead and book your free strategy session now. So give me some background information on your team, your products, your business. And then we choose a time to talk, which is completely free with no obligations, and we'll talk about your team, your business, what you want and how to achieve it. So you'll get clarity on what the next steps will be to break through any barriers you have and get the results you want. So fill out the form. So get in touch and book your strategy session now. And let's get started.